The 20th century. Painted in 1940, Warner Sallman's Head of Christ became the global standard, especially in Protestant Christianity. It is one of the most reproduced religious images in human history, with over 500 million copies distributed worldwide, and it is majorly the default image of Jesus in churches, homes, Bibles, and schools, especially in the Western world. Here, Jesus is depicted as a gentle, light-skinned, long-haired, and bearded European with a calm and approachable expression. This portrayal reflects 20th century Western ideals of holiness, kindness, and familiarity. The 15th century. Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, painted between 1495 and 1498, shows Jesus as calm, centered, and deeply human. This was during the Renaissance, a time when artists aimed for realism, emotion, and psychological depth. This art deeply shaped Western Christianity's mental picture of Jesus, as it depicts him as a noble Italian man with long hair, full beard, and European features that later artists would repeat. The 12th century. During the medieval period, Romanesque and Gothic art dominated. Christ appears enthroned, rigid, and symmetrical, often surrounded by symbols of the four evangelists: the lion, ox, eagle, and man, all emphasizing his divinity and role as cosmic sovereign. This depicts Jesus not as shepherd, nor a teacher, but as the judge of the world. The style reflects medieval theology, where divine power and order were emphasized over human emotion. The 7th century. Now let's jump back to early Egyptian Christianity. This rare Coptic icon from the 6th or early 7th century, now in the Louvre, shows something deeply personal. Jesus stands beside Abbot Mina, with his arm around the monk's shoulder, a gesture of friendship and intimacy. And notice this, Jesus doesn't tower over Mina. They're the same height, radical equality. Instead of judgment or authority, Jesus appears as a close spiritual companion. This depiction reflects early Egyptian Christianity, where faith emphasized personal closeness to Christ rather than imperial power or distant divinity. The 6th century. This is one of the most important images in Christian art. The Christ Pantocrator icon, preserved at St. Catherine's Monastery in Sinai, presents Jesus as the all-powerful ruler of the universe. He has long hair, a beard, a penetrating gaze, and holds the Gospels while offering a blessing. Look closely at his face, and you'll notice something unusual. The two sides are slightly different. This was likely intentional, symbolizing Jesus' dual nature, human and divine. This is one of the most theologically complex images of Jesus ever made, and it remains a central, powerful image in Orthodox Christianity today. But here's where it gets interesting. In 2018, archaeologists discovered rare Byzantine wall paintings in the ruins of Shivta in southern Israel. They date to the same 6th century as the Pantocrator, but Jesus looks completely different. He is youthful, clean-shaven, and short-haired. Despite being painted around the same time as the Pantocrator, this image reflects an older artistic tradition, showing that multiple images of Jesus coexisted in the same century, especially in different regions. The 5th century. Now we arrive at one of the most beautiful depictions of Christ in early Christian art. In the Mausoleum of Galla Placidia in Ravenna, Italy, there's a stunning mosaic. It depicts Jesus as a youthful, beardless figure sitting among sheep, symbolizing his role as protector and leader. But this is not just any shepherd. Jesus wears a gold and purple cloak, colors associated with Roman emperors. His shepherd's staff is a golden cross, and behind him is a brilliant blue sky, which was revolutionary. Earlier Christian art used gold backgrounds, but here, the blue evokes heaven itself. By this time, Christianity is now the official religion of the Roman Empire, and Jesus is portrayed not just as protector, but as ruler, as cosmocrator, ruler of the cosmos. Around the same time, on the wooden doors of Santa Sabina in Rome, we find the earliest known image of Jesus on the cross. For centuries, Christians avoided showing the crucifixion, for it was too painful and too shameful. Crucifixion was a method of execution for slaves and criminals. Depicting your God that way back then was unthinkable. But here, something has changed. Jesus appears calm, upright, and untouched by pain. He stands larger than the two thieves crucified beside him. There's no blood, no agony. This is not suffering. This is theological victory. This marks a major transition in Christian art, from focusing solely on Christ's life and miracles to confronting the narrative of his death and sacrifice. The 4th century. By the late 4th century, something fundamental changed. This image from the catacombs of Camaldilla in Rome shows one of the earliest surviving bearded depictions of Jesus. Beside his halo are the Greek letters Alpha and Omega, which means the beginning and the end. This signals a major shift. Jesus is no longer just a teacher or miracle worker. He is now eternal, cosmic, and divine. And visually, this is where the familiar Jesus begins to take shape. Remove the halo, and this figure already looks surprisingly modern. You might ask, why the beard? It may have been borrowed from depictions of Zeus and Jupiter, pagan gods of authority and wisdom. As Christianity became legal in 313 CE with the Edict of Milan, and then the official religion of Rome in 380 CE, Jesus needed to look like a god Romans would respect. So they gave him the beard of divine authority. The 3rd century. In the catacombs of Priscilla, beneath the streets of Rome, early Christians quietly decorated their burial spaces. Here, Jesus appears as the Good Shepherd. He is young, beardless, with short curly hair, carrying a lamb over his shoulders. Other sheep graze nearby, in a peaceful pastoral setting. He looks less like a divine ruler, and more like an ordinary Roman youth. This image borrows heavily from Greco-Roman symbolism, specifically from statues of Hermes Creophoros, the ram bearer. To Romans, the shepherd represented protection, guidance, and care, not power. And for early Christians, this symbolism was safe. Romans wouldn't immediately recognize it as Christian. It could just be a pastoral scene. This was one of the most comforting and widespread ways early Christians portrayed Jesus. Another 3rd century image from the catacomb of Calixtus shows Jesus performing the miracle of raising Lazarus from the dead. But here's what immediately stands out. Jesus is holding a wand. In the Roman visual language, wands, called virga in Latin, symbolized both authority and magic. To Roman audiences, miracles were often understood through the lens of magic, not theology. In fact, early Christians were frequently accused of being magicians. To skeptical Romans, there was little difference between a miracle worker and a sorcerer. So Jesus here looks Roman, dresses Roman, and performs power in a way Romans would recognize, with a wand, like a philosopher-magician. The 2nd century. Now we arrive at the earliest visual reference to Jesus we have, carved into plaster on a wall on Palatine Hill in Rome, and discovered in 1857. This graffito dates to the 2nd or early 3rd century, and if you are feeling confused or offended by its content, that's because it was not created as a celebration of Jesus, but rather as a mockery. During this period, Christianity was not an official religion, and most Roman citizens looked at its practitioners with suspicion and skepticism. This graffiti was probably created to make fun of Alexamenos, a Christian, by implying that he worshipped a donkey-headed god. The inscription that accompanies the image indeed reads, Alexamenos worshipping his god. At the time, crucifixion was seen as shameful, and worshipping a crucified man was considered absurd. This image reminds us that the earliest visual reference to Jesus wasn't reverent, it was hostile.